Welcome, everyone, to another exciting edition of Coach Ben's Authors and Coaches United. Today's guest is author Meagan F. Clements. Let's jump right into the interview. Who are your inspirations as an author?
I am highly inspired by Stan and Jan Berenstain of the children's picture book series, The Berenstain Bears. It's a family of anthropomorphic grizzly bears, and that's just a fancy word that stands for animals with human-like characteristics. I'm also highly inspired by Dr. Seuss and Shel Silverstein, the poet. I love to rhyme when I'm writing poetry, picture books. So I'm highly inspired by those. My personal book series, or at least one of mine, I have several book series, but the Fly family is my family of anthropomorphic houseflies or houseflies with human like characteristics. And that was my attempt at trying to be the next Stan and Jan Berenstain. In terms of the middle grade fiction that I write, geared more towards ages 10 to 12, I'm inspired by authors like Gary Paulson, who wrote a famous middle grade book called Hatchet. Judy Blume, who's famous for Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, and things more in that vein. So just, ages 10 to 12, girls and boys dealing with issues like puberty and growing up, kind of coming of age type books. Those authors inspire me as well.
What would you say to someone who is on the fence about purchasing one of your books?
I would say I have a very interesting narrative style of writing. So I would say that my inspirations started off more in like I said, Dr. Seuss, Shel Silverstein, more of the creative writers that got really into like wordplay. So I play around with a lot of different literary devices, like alliteration, the repetition of consonant sounds, imagery, vivid details, onomatopoeia, sound words like whoosh, splash, buzz, things like that. So I would say that when you read a book from me, expect that you're going to get a lot of, sound words. You're going to get a lot of repetition of consonant sounds so that as you're reading a sentence, it kind of flows right off the tip of your tongue. I also have background in journalism, and that taught me to be able to simplify my narrative style of writing and keep things just concise enough that I'm never assuming that the reader understands. That if it's something like in a middle grade novel and I'm talking about, say, a topic like puberty, growing up, facts of life, I'm never assuming that my reader knows what that is. So I'm putting in a little bit of education. I also have a teaching credential and I worked with students for many years. So I'm putting in a little bit of background on things like, what is puberty? If it's a book that has some science facts in there, I have one, it's a chapter book and it deals with the ocean and sea creatures. And it's, stuff like, what is an oyster, where are oysters found, so there's a little bit more educational facts in my books, as well as you get like the sound words, the vivid details, the imagery, sometimes you get like creative leads, suspenseful leads, it could have been an ordinary Tuesday. So if you're looking for something that you're gonna get a little surprise when you open up a page in my book, and it's not just going to start out like once upon a time there was a princess, then invest in one of my books.
What makes you qualified to write children's books?
I think I touched on this a little bit in the last question, but I have a teaching credential, a multiple subject clear teaching credential. That's actually what I went to college for before making the transition to becoming a full-time author. Writing was always just a hobby of mine. It was just something that I did in my free time for enjoyment. And I never knew how to make a living at it. I don't think I knew what the process would be like to actually publish a book. And there was a lot of educating that I had to do on my end to figure out how I was going to make that happen. Was I going to go the traditional publishing, the trade publishing route, or was I going to go the self-publishing route? So it always seemed easier that I would just work in the classroom. I knew how to get a job at a school district, and I would just write for fun in my free time. And when the pandemic hit, that's actually when I started, writing and actually figuring out how to publish stories. And once I educated myself on the process of self publishing and figured out how to make this a thing, um, I became, a full time author. And in every book that I publish, whether it's a self help book or whether it's my children's books, um, I use my teaching credential. There's always education in every book. Like I said, whether it's my self help series where I have books on anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, other fears, things such as dealing with grief, all that stuff. I always have a little bit of education in there, just like I'm, giving a presentation to a group of fifth graders. It might even be a smaller audience, a group of second graders, kindergartners even. There's education in my books. I also lesson plan and create study guides for I'd say 80% of my books. I don't do that for my self-help ones, but for the children's ones, I come up with comprehension questions, key vocabulary. I do a little bit of it's kind of like a Cliff's Notes, where I actually have like a book summary. And then I have like, answers to some of my comprehension questions, the answer keys. And I include like life lessons, key literary themes, and I have all of those as PDF files available for download on my website that parents, homeschool moms and dads, and teachers can download and print off and use that in their classroom. I feel like I know the book better than my reader. And so therefore it's an easy, if you are looking to invest in one of my books, and like I said, you're a parent, a homeschool mom or dad, or a teacher, invest in my books and you're going to get free educational content that you can download and print off and use that as supplemental material for your language arts lesson. Say you're a sixth grade teacher and you buy one of my middle grade books, you've got a full lesson that you can teach.
Why should people trust Meagan F. Clements as an author?
I think you should trust Meagan F. Clements as an author because my books are all self-published, and 1,000% of everything you read, from the title of the book to the inside cover to the dedication page to the back of the book summary, um, to all of the educational material, downloadables, study guides, all that stuff that's on my website, was all created by me. I am essentially a one woman stand, with the exception of I have a web designer that does my website, and I have a book designer. And I do not do my own cover art or interior illustrations. Um, but I am a one woman stand in terms of everything else. I have no ghostwriters that I work with. I edit all of my own books myself. My mom is actually the only person that I show my books to as I'm writing them. If it's like a self-help book, like the ones I have on anxiety or obsessive compulsive disorder or, grief, or whether it's one of my middle grade novels with chapters, she will give me feedback along the way when I'm like, hey, check out, these 10 tips I have for anxiety. And she might give me, hey, what if you included this, as a possible suggestion, for helping someone that's struggling with their anxiety and their nerves. Or if it's, like a chapter in one of my middle grade novels, she might say, hey, I'm not sure, a child age 11 that's reading this is going to understand what you mean by this phrase. Maybe tweak that a little bit. Other than that, I edit the rest of my books, proofread them all myself. So it's not like if you go on, like, say, Amazon, or you go to Target, Barnes and Noble, and you're picking up a book that was written by, one of the latest celebrities, and their name is real big and bold on the cover. It's like Paris Hilton, and then it's her picture, and then on the very bottom in really tiny print it says with, and then it's got somebody else's name in like size 10 or 12 point font. That's the ghostwriter, and that's typically the person that wrote the book. So you're not going to get any of that with me. You're going to get 100%. Whatever you read, I wrote it.
What is special or unique about your brand?
It's not like when you just look at like a can of soda and you get the font on the outside of the soda can and you get the color on the outside of the soda can. Could be like, like it could be like Orange Crush or something, and it's just like an orange can and it's got like, the writing, it's kind of like a thick, white writing and it's got like a little orange slice or something. You're not going to get just that in terms of Meagan F. Clements, her books. You're going to get who I am as a person and what I'm all about when you go to my website. The first and the biggest thing that I'm all about is I am obsessed with anything and everything to do with the color purple. That's a huge, like, if you need to know one thing about me, that's like huge. And if you go to my website, my brand, I have the color purple sprinkled all throughout my website in all of my fonts, in my little name tag that's on the very upper right hand corner of my website. I it's huge. You're gonna get a sense and a feel for who I am. Another thing is that um, outside of the color purple, I'm heavily, heavily influenced by rock and roll music. And I also have a passion, interestingly enough, I also have a passion for, I'm kind of into piercings. And you're going to get in as a part of my brand, not only that I love the color purple, but you're going to get a sense that I love rock and roll and that I like occasionally, like, cool, edgy piercings. And I try to, dumb down some of the piercing references and the rock and roll references to keep it age appropriate for my children's books. But I definitely have on my website, you're going to get that sense that when you are on my website and you pull up a sample of one of my pieces or something, I have book characters, like in my Fly family series, a housefly with human-like characteristics. One of them is heavily into blues rock music. She plays guitar. I have scenes in my books about my characters, going to get their ears pierced in like a tattoo shop or something. So my brand, you get a sense for not just who my characters are, but that my characters are actually little pieces of who I am in my personal life.
Where can people go to find out more about your work?
I am on Instagram. It's at Miss M Clements, or it's the same spelling for my website. It's missmclements.com.